The Curious Incidents of the Dog in the Nighttime by Mark Haddon. Chapter 191. My train set had a little building that was 2 rooms with a corridor between them, and one was the ticket office where you bought the tickets, and one was a waiting room where you waited for the train. The train station in Swindon wasn't like that. There was a tunnel and some stairs and a shop and a cafe and a waiting room, like this. But this is not a very accurate map of the station because I was scared, so I was not noticing things very well. And this is just what I remember. So what it is an approximation. And it was like standing on a cliff in a really strong wind because it made me feel giddy and sick because there were lots of people walking into and out of the tunnel and it was really echoey. And there's only one way to go, and that was down the tunnel. And it smelled of toilets and cigarettes. So I stood against the wall and held onto the edge of a sign that said, "Customers seeking access to car park, please use assistance phone opposite right of the ticket office," to make sure that I didn't fall over and go into a crouch on the ground. And I wanted to go home, but I was frightened of going home, and I tried to make a plan of what I should do in my head, but there are too many things to look at and too many things to hear. So I put my hands over my ears to block out the noise and think. And I thought I had to stay in the station to get on a train, and I had to sit down somewhere, and there was nowhere to sit down near the door of the station, so I had to walk down the tunnel. So I said to myself, in my head, not out loud, "I'll walk down the tunnel and there might be somewhere I can sit down and then I can shut my eyes and I can think." And I walked down the tunnel trying to concentrate on the sign at the end of the tunnel that said "Warning, CCTV in operation." It was like stepping off the cliff on a tightrope. And eventually I got to the end of the tunnel and there were some stairs and I went up the stairs and there were still lots of people and I groaned and there was a shop at the top of the stairs and a room with chairs in it. There were too many people in the room with chairs in it, so I walked past. And there were signs saying "Great Western" and "Cold Beers and Lagers" and "Caution Wet Floor" and "Your 50 pence will keep a premature baby alive for 1.8 seconds" and "Transforming Travel" and "Refreshingly Different" and "It's delicious, it's creamy, and it's only £1 30 hot chocolate deluxe" and 0870-777-7676 and "A Lemon Tree" and "No Smoking and Fine Teas." And there were some little tables with chairs next to them, and no one was sitting at one of the tables, and it was in a corner, and I sat down on one of the chairs next to it, and I closed my eyes. And I put my hands in my pockets, and Toby climbed into my hand, and I gave him 2 pellets of rat food from my bag. And I gripped the Swiss Army knife in the other hand, and I groaned to cover up the noise because I had taken my hands off my ears, but not so loud that other people would hear me groaning and come and talk to me. And then I tried to think about what I had to do, but I couldn't think because there were too many other things in my head. So I did a maths problem to make my head clearer. And the maths problem that I did was called Conway's Soldier. And in Conway's Soldier, you have a chessboard that continues infinitely in all directions. And every square below a horizontal line has a colored tile on it like this. And you can move a colored tile only if it can jump over a colored tile horizontally or vertically, but not diagonally. And then empty square 2 squares away. When you move a colored tile in this way, you have to remove the colored tile that it jumped over like this. You have to see how far you get the colored tiles out of the starting horizontal line. And you start by doing something like this. And then you do something like this. And I know what the answer is because wherever you move the colored tiles, you'll never get a colored tile more than 4 squares above the starting horizontal line. It is a good maths problem to do in your head when you don't want to think about something else because you can make it as complicated as you need to fill your brain by making the board as big as you want and the moves as complicated as you want. And I had got to. And then I looked up and saw there was a policeman standing in front of me and he was saying, "Anyone at home?" But I didn't know what that meant. And then he said, "Are you all right, young man?" I looked at him and I thought for a bit so that I would answer correctly, and I said, "No." And he said, "You're looking a bit worse for wear." He had a gold ring on one of his fingers and it had curly letters on it, but I couldn't see what the letters were. And then he said, "The lady at the cafe says you've been here for 2.5 hours, and when she tried talking to you, you were in a complete trance." Then he said, "What's your name?" And I said, "Christopher Boone." He said, "Where do you live?" And I said, 36 Randolph Street. And I started feeling better because I like policemen and it was an easy question. And I wonder whether I should tell him that Father killed Wellington and whether he would arrest Father. And he said, "What are you doing here?" And I said, "I needed to sit down and be quiet and think." And he said, "Okay, let's keep it simple. What are you doing at the railway station?" And I said, "I'm going to see Mother." And he said, "Yes, Mother?" Excuse me. And he said, "Mother?" And I said, "Yes, Mother." And he said, "Where's your train?" And I said, I don't know. She lives in London. I don't know when there's a train to London. He said, so you don't live with your mother? And I said, no, but I'm going to. And then he sat down next to me and said, so where does your mother live? And I said, in London. And he said, but where in London? And I said, 451C Chapter Road, London, NWT 5NG. And he said, Jesus, what is that? And I looked down and I said, that's my pet rat, Toby. He was looking out of my pocket at the policeman. And the policeman said, a pet rat? And I said, yes, a pet rat. He's very clean, and he hasn't got the bubonic plague. And the policeman said, well, that's reassuring. I said, yes. And he said, have you got a ticket? And I said, no. And he said, have you got any money to get a ticket? And I said, no. And he said, so how precisely were you going to get to London then? And then I didn't know what to say because I had father's cash point card in my pocket and it was illegal to steal things. But he was a policeman, so I had to tell the truth. So I said, I have a cash point card. And I took it out of my pocket and I showed it to him. And this was a white lie. The policeman said, is this your card? And then I thought he might arrest me. And I said, no, it's father's. And he said, father's? I said, yes, father's. He said, okay. But he said it really slowly and he squeezed his nose between his thumb and forefinger. And I said, he told me the number, which was another white lie. And he said, why don't you and I take a stroll to the cash point machine, eh? And I said, you mustn't touch me. And he said, why would I want to touch you? And I said, I don't know. And he said, well, neither do I. And I said, because I got a caution for hitting a policeman, but I didn't mean to hurt him, and if I do it again, I'll get into even bigger trouble. Then he looked at me and he said, you're serious, aren't you? And I said, yes. And he said, you lead the way. And I said, where? And he said, back by the ticket office. And he pointed with his thumb. Then we walked back to the tunnel, but it wasn't so frightening this time because there was a policeman with me. And I put the cash point card into the machine like father had let me do sometimes when we were shopping together. And it said, enter your personal number. And I typed in 3558 and pressed the enter button. And the machine said, please enter amount. And there was a choice. And I asked the policeman, how much does it cost to get a ticket for a train to London? And he said, about 30 quid. And I said, is that pounds? And he said, Christ alive. And he laughed. But I didn't laugh because I don't like people laughing at me, even if they're policemen. And he stopped laughing and he said, yep, it's 30 pounds. So I pressed 50 pounds and 5 10-pound notes came out of the machine. The receipt. And I put the notes and the receipt, no card, into my pocket. And the policeman said, well, guess I shouldn't keep you chatting any longer. And I said, where do I get a ticket for the train from? Because if you're lost and you need directions, you can ask a policeman. And he said, you're a prize specimen, aren't you? And I said, where do I get a ticket for the train from? Because he hadn't answered my question. And he said, in there, and he pointed. And there was a big room with a glass window on the other side of the train station door. And then he said, are you sure you know what you're doing? And I said, yes, I'm going to London to live with my mother. He said, has your mother got a telephone number? And I said, yes. And he said, can you tell me what it is? And I said, yes, it's 0208-887-8907. And he said, and you'll ring her if you get into any trouble. And I said, yes, because I knew you could ring people from phone boxes if you had money. And I had money now. And he said, good. And I walked in the ticket office, and I turned around, and I could see the policeman was still watching me, so I felt safe. There's a long desk at the other side of the big room and a window on the desk, and there's a man standing in front of the window. There was a man behind the window, and I said to the man behind the window, I want to go to London. And the man in front of the window said, if you don't mind. And he turned around so that his back was toward me, and the man behind the window gave him a little bit of paper to sign. And he signed it and pushed it back under the window. The man behind the window gave him a ticket. Then the man in front of the window looked at me and he said, what the fuck are you looking at? And then he walked away. He had dreadlocks, which is what some black people have, but he was white, and dreadlocks is when you never wash your hair and it looks like old rope. And he had red trousers with stars on them, and I kept my hand on my Swiss Army knife in case he touched me. Then there was no one else in front of the window, and I said to the man behind the window, I want to go to London. And I hadn't been frightened when I was with the policeman, but I turned around and saw that he had gone now, and I was scared again. So I tried to pretend I was playing a game on my computer. It was called Train to London, and it was like The Mist or the 11th Hour. You had to solve lots of different problems to get to the next level. And I could turn it off at any time. The man said single or return. And I said, what does single or return mean? And he said, do you want to go one way or do you want to go and come back? And I said, I want to stay there when I get there. And he said, for how long? And I said, till I go to university. And he said, single then. And I said, that'll be 32 pounds. And I gave him 50 pounds and he gave me 10 pounds back and he said, don't you go throwing it away. And then he gave me a little yellow and orange ticket and 8 pounds in coins and I put all in my pocket with my knife. And I didn't like the ticket being half yellow, but I had to keep it because it was my train ticket. And then he said, if you could move away from the counter. And I said, when is the train to London? And he looked at his watch and said, platform 1, 5 minutes. And I said, where is platform 1? And he said, pointed and said, to the underpass and up the stairs. You'll see the signs. An underpass meant tunnel because I could see where he was pointing, so I went out of the ticket office, but it wasn't like a computer game at all because I was in the middle of it. And it was like all the signs were shouting in my head, and someone bumped into me as they walked past, and I made a noise like a dog barking to scare them off. I pictured in my head a big red line across the floor which started at my feet and went through the tunnel. And I started walking along the red line saying left, right, left, right, left, right. Because sometimes when I'm frightened or angry, it helps if I do something that has a rhythm to it, like music drumming, which is something Siobhan taught me to do. And I went up the stairs and I saw a sign saying platform 1, and the arrow was pointing at a glass door. So I went through it, and someone bumped into me again with a suitcase, and I made another noise like a dog barking, and they said, watch where the hell you're going. But I pretended that they were just one of the guarding demons in Train to London, and there's a train. And I saw a man with a newspaper and a bag of golf clubs go up to one of the doors of the train and press a big button next to it, and the doors were electronic, and they slid open, and I liked that. And then the doors closed behind him. And I looked at my watch, and 3 minutes had gone past since I was at the ticket office, which meant the train would be going in 2 minutes. And then I went up the door, and I pressed the big button, and the doors slid open, and I stepped through the doors. And I was on the train to London. Chapter 193. When I used to play with my train set, I made a train timetable because I liked timetables. And I like timetables because I like to know when everything is going to happen. This was my timetable when I lived at home with father and I thought that mother was dead from a heart attack. This was the timetable for a Monday, and also it is an approximation. 7:20 a.m. wake up. 7:25 a.m. clean teeth and wash face. 7:30 a.m. give Toby food and water. 7:40 a.m. have breakfast. 8 a.m. put school clothes on. 8:05 a.m. pack school bag. 8:10 a.m. read book or watch video. 8:32 a.m. catch bus to school. 8:43 a.m. go past tropical fish shop. 8:51 a.m. arrive at school. 9 o'clock a.m. school assembly. 9:15 a.m. first morning class. 10:30 a.m. break. 10:50 a.m. art class with Mrs. Peters. 12:30 p.m. lunch. 1 p.m. first afternoon class. 2:15 p.m. second afternoon class. 3:30 p.m. catch school bus home. 3:49 p.m. get off school bus at home. 3:50 p.m. have juice and snack. 3:55 p.m. give Toby food and water. 4 p.m. take Toby out of his cage. 4:18 p.m. put Toby in his cage. 4:20 p.m. watch television or video. 5 o'clock p.m. read a book. 6 p.m. have tea. 6:30 p.m. watch television or a video. 7 o'clock p.m. do maths practice. 8 o'clock p.m. have a bath. 8:15 p.m. get changed in pajamas. 8:20 p.m. play computer games. 9 o'clock p.m. watch television or a video. 9:20 p.m. have juice and a snack. 9:30 p.m. go to bed. At the weekend, I make up my own timetable and I write it down on a piece of cardboard and I put it up on the wall. And it says things like feed Toby or do maths or go to the shop to buy sweets. And that is one of the other reasons why I don't like France. Because when people are on holiday, they don't have a timetable. I had to get mother and father to tell me every morning exactly what we're going to do that day to make me feel better. Because time is not like space. When you put something down somewhere like a protractor or a biscuit, you can have a map in your head and tell you where you have left it. But even if you don't have a map, it will still be there because a map is a representation of things that actually exist, so you can find the protractor or the biscuit again. And a timetable is a map of time, except that if you don't have a timetable, time is not there, like the landing in the garden and the route to school. Because time is only the relationship between the way different things change, like the earth going around the sun and atoms vibrating and clocks ticking, and day and night, and waking up and going to sleep. It is like west or northeast, which won't exist when the Earth stops existing and falls under the sun, because it is only a relationship between the North Pole and the South Pole, and everywhere else like Mogadishu and Sunderland and Canberra. And it isn't a fixed relationship like the relationship between our house and Mrs. Shears' house, or like the relationship between 7 and 865. It depends on how fast you're going relative to a specific point. If you go off in a spaceship and you travel near the speed of light, you may come back and find that all your family is dead, and you are still young. It will be the future, but your clock will say that you've only been away for a few days or months. And because nothing can travel faster than the speed of light, this means that we can only know about a fraction of things that go on in the universe, like this. And this is a map of everything and everywhere, and the features on the right and the past is on the left, and the gradient of the line c is the speed of light. We can't know about the things which happen in the shaded areas, even though some of them have already happened. When we get to F, it will be possible to find out about things which happen in the lighter areas, P and Q. And this means that time is a mystery and not even a thing. And no one has ever solved the puzzle of what time is exactly. So if you get lost in time, it is like being lost in a desert, except that you can't see the desert because it is not a thing. This is why I like timetables, because they make sure you don't get lost in time.